Okay, y'all. We got to talk about this. We got to talk about this because, man, the Christian media world has been shaking for the past year and a half, and a lot of people still don't fully understand what went down. So today we're breaking it all the way down. We're talking Daystar Television, we're talking Jimmy Evans, and we're talking about how one man's loyalty, or maybe his blind loyalty, played a real fateful role in one of the biggest scandals in Christian broadcasting history. So grab your coffee, sit down, because this is going to be a whole thing. All right, so first, for anybody who doesn't know, Daystar Television Network is one of the largest Christian broadcasting networks in the world. We're talking 2.3 billion viewers globally. Billion with a B. This is not a small operation. This is a multi-billion-dollar Christian media empire built by Marcus Lamb and his wife, Joni Lamb. Marcus passed away back in 2021, so Joni became the face of the whole thing. And look, for a long time, Daystar was doing what it was supposed to do, spreading the gospel, reaching people, all of that. But then, things started to unravel. So here's where it gets heavy, y'all, and I want to be sensitive because this involves a child. Joni's own son, Jonathan Lamb, and his wife, Susie, came out publicly.
So, obviously Jonathan goes to work every day. I work some, but I'm with my kids a lot. My little baby, her and I have very, 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 very close bond. And both our love languages are physical touch. So, I just got to pour that on her. And so as we're going in early 2020, I started to notice, but I didn't know what to think of it. She starts stiffening up when people come close. Everyone from family members, everyone at this point. She's just, she was so bubbly and the opposite of that before. It made me sad, but, she was still clung on to me. So I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a passing stage. From age 3, 4, 5, things happen. By that, so there's no allegations, nothing at this point. Then that summer, we go on the executive retreat. They call it just a family trip, but that's what it was. And one of the days, Pete comes up to me in the afternoon and just says, "Hey, I just want to let you know, your daughter walked in on me in the bathroom. I was fully naked. I was about to shower and she saw everything. Okay, I'm just letting you know." And he kind of was very defensive. And I just said, okay. What do you do with that? I mean, we're all there. It could have happened. Okay. I go check on her and she's not really, she's fine. She seems okay. So I don't know. I don't think I even told Jonathan because I didn't really know what to do with it. So from there, time's passing, come back from that trip. And nothing really alarming until like November when she...
This was early 2020, the first incident,
yes,
correct? Summer 2020.
Summer 2020.
And you have something to say.
Well, I'm just thinking, okay, so he came and told you that. And whenever he initially told you that, though, you had never even imagined anything ever has happened to your daughter and never even imagined. This is before even, because we know now that your sister had warned you guys about him. But had that already happened, the warning? So there was nothing in your mind at this point.
At no point we were
that was like anything happened. It was just like, oh, geez, he didn't lock the door and the kid walked in. Like this is like a careless mistake. He should have locked the door. And
however, she had already started to close up prior to that.
But you didn't have any reason to think it was to notice that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So I with that, so time passes until November. That evening when she, in very graphic detail, she just said she started off with he put his hands and showed me the places on our body.
Yeah.
This was the most unexpected blow of my life. And I kind of just sat on the stairs like, is my little girl saying this? She's 5. How could this even enter her brain? And then first she showed me one part of her body and she goes, and also over here. I remember those words, and also, it's like a second knife. And I did what I knew to do at that point. Well, first I asked her, I said, where is this happening? Is this happening at the school? Because her world, again, was home, school, and Daystar. How could it be Daystar, right? It had to be the only place that I don't know, maybe school, which was a church, actually, a little pre-K.
And can you say what you I want you to keep going on this. Can you say kind of what you learned after this, that when meeting with a counselor, you learned, oh, maybe I was leading the questions too much for the child, or, but every parent thinks that they can do better when they hear something like this. Until you're in the situation without the training, we all have no freaking clue what to do. So everybody that's been hard on you about this, they need to shut up. And everybody that's been hard on you about this, they need to shut up until they're in the situation with all the many, many details that you guys have gone through. And this is why we want to break it down step by step. So you get this from your daughter and you begin to ask her questions that pop in your head. So first,
Joni, we wanted to kind of just gather around with you today. You're a TV personality all over the world. You know, you're known for bringing news to the world, making people aware of issues that they need to know that can make their life a better life. You've been amazing at that through the years. And we know there's stuff out there circulating and accusations that are coming from people that don't even know who you are, don't know you. And we, as your friends sitting here today, we have worked with you every day for years. We know you better than anybody out there that feels like they have the right to do what they're doing. So the girls and I, we just wanted to sit with you today, and we wanted to ask you some of those questions that people are wanting answers. And so we just wanted to have our coffee and just ask you those questions.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you know, like Cindy said, there are those allegations out there from people who really don't know much about what's going on. One of the questions is, when did you hear about the alleged abuse?
My first knowledge of any abuse was in November of 2020. And Susie called me and said there had been an incident at my granddaughter's preschool. And she told me that something had happened where a little boy touched her and her friend. And so she called me and asked me, would I go to the school with her? And I said, absolutely. So I went with her to the school. We reported it to the school. And of course, you know, I was there to encourage, and as I would for any child, but especially my granddaughter.
Of course, yes.
And so that was the incident that happened. And yet, you know, what's being written is just taken out of context. That was the incident that happened in 2020, and I was there. And Susie actually called me to go there.
Okay, so the word about you covering up, there's no truth to that.
You know, when I started hearing that, I thought to myself, what am I covering up? I've covered up nothing.
Right.
And so I never covered up anything. Now, there was another incident written about that was an incident that happened at our family retreat. This was in 2021. Okay. We were all staying in this house together, and again, we do that once a year. And my two older grandchildren were staying in an upstairs bedroom, and it was a long room, and there was a bunk bed on one side, and there was another bunk bed on the other side. And so my grandson was talking about that he had the city view, and he was saying his sister had the beach view.
Okay.
And so one afternoon he was talking about that, and who they call Pete was in the room holding a 1-year-old baby boy, okay? And so Pete says, oh, so you've got the city view, and everybody was talking about, well, I'd rather have the beach view, and my grandson saying, no, I like the city view. And Pete said, well, I like the city view too. And so he said, I want to see your city view. So they went up the stairs.
The grandson and Pete, and Pete had the baby.
The grandson, Pete, and the baby. Now, all those details have been left out.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they went up the steps, and again, I was there. I heard this whole conversation. And around the same time, or maybe just a few minutes after, I don't know exactly when, but my granddaughter went up to the room and went over to her side while Pete and the baby and my grandson were looking out the window at the city view.
Okay.
And she proceeded to put her bathing suit on. Well, about the time she started to put it on, Jonathan comes running up the stairs
Her dad.
and says, "What are you doing in here while she's changing? You know, what are you doing? You know?" And Pete was like, "Well, I'm sorry. I don't even know if he actually saw anything
Because he had his back to her.
because he was holding the baby and the 8-year-old was there. So he said, I'm so sorry, and left. But there had been some very peculiar things that have happened at this particular trip. I remember when we were at the grocery store, all the family was there because when we go, we always go to the grocery store and get food for breakfast and that kind of thing. And I remember Susie was standing in line and she began to murmur under her breath and start talking about a man that was behind her. And she was getting angrier and angrier, and we were like, what's going on? And she, she said, he was looking at me, in the store. And the man is like on his phone, not knowing what in the world she's saying or doing. We were just trying to calm her down. So it was just a weird dynamic that was going on with her from the beginning.
Right.
I know that you called me from Florida and told me that it was a tough time as a family, and I know that when families get together like that, a lot of times there are times that you disagree about things or things happen.
Well, what happened was Marcus was alive, and so we just met together as a family. He talked to everyone, and clearly nothing happened.
Yeah.
Speaking of Pastor Marcus, first I want to say thanks for the opportunity. You've always been easy to talk to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just
Very transparent.
very transparent. And so I want to ask you, because Susie said that you and Pastor Marcus covered it up. Did you cover it up?
Marcus isn't here, but I will just say absolutely a lie. I never covered up anything. I wouldn't cover up anything. Marcus didn't cover up anything.
That Joni Lamb and Daystar tried to cover it up. They said Joni told them not to go to the police. She allegedly defended the person who did it. Now, I don't know about y'all, but when somebody uses "God told me" to protect an abuser and silence a child's parents, that is not the Holy Spirit. That's something else entirely. And it didn't stop there. Susie also alleged that she herself was sexually assaulted in 2017 by a chiropractor who worked for the family in Daystar's own green room. And when she told Marcus and Joni, Marcus allegedly paid the man off, and Joni told her to keep quiet to protect the company's reputation. Y'all, protect the company's reputation. Not protect the victim, not seek justice. Protect the company. That right there, that is the spirit of religion without relationship. That is when an institution becomes an idol. So now we get to Jimmy Evans, and this is where it gets complicated, because Jimmy Evans is somebody a lot of believers respected. He was a trusted voice in Christian marriage and family ministry for over 30 years, founded XO Marriage, wrote Marriage on the Rock, helped countless couples build Christ-centered relationships. Like, this is not some random dude. This man had a legacy. But see, that's exactly what makes his role in this story so significant. Because while all of this scandal is brewing, while Jonathan and Susie are crying out about their child, there's a recording that surfaces, published by the Roy's Report, over 500,000 views. And in this recording, Jimmy Evans is heard claiming that Joni Lamb is the voice of God at Daystar. And not only that, he's rebuking Jonathan and Susie for not supporting Joni's marriage to Doug Weiss. Hold on. So the parents of an abused child are speaking out, and Jimmy Evans, the marriage expert, is on a recording taking Joni's side and calling her the voice of God? Bro, that is not discernment. That is what happens when you get too close to power and too far from truth. See, this is a real thing in ministry circles. When you're embedded in somebody's network, when your platform is tied to their platform, when your money flows through their stream, it becomes very hard to call out what needs to be called out. And I'm not saying Jimmy Evans is a bad person. I'm saying he was in a position where his loyalty to Joni Lamb clouded his judgment at a moment when clarity was desperately needed. Now, eventually, Jimmy Evans announced he was stepping away from XO Marriage to focus on his Tipping Point Ministries End Times platform. Said he was very excited about the transition. And look, maybe that's genuine. Maybe God really was redirecting him. But the timing, y'all. Journalist Julie Roys pointed out that the announcement came after the backlash from that recording, after people heard him calling Joni the voice of God and defending her marriage to Weiss. So was it a calling or was it damage control? Only God knows his heart. But the optics? The optics were rough. Uncertain place right now. So what do we take from all of this? Because I don't just want to gossip, y'all. That's not what we're here for. We're here to learn. Here's what I see. I see a man with a real gift, Jimmy Evans, who got too close to an institution and too far from accountability. I see what happens when we place leaders on pedestals so high that we start calling them the voice of God instead of holding them to the standard of God's word. And I see a network that prioritized its brand over the bodies and souls of the people it was supposed to serve. The Bible says in Proverbs 11:3, "The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity." That hits different when you read it in the context of Daystar, because integrity, true integrity, doesn't wait until the public finds out. Integrity acts when it's inconvenient. Integrity protects the child first. So yeah, y'all, Jimmy Evans' role in the Daystar story? It's a cautionary tale. Not a story of a villain necessarily, but a story of a gifted man who, at a critical moment, chose the wrong side of history. And that choice followed him. Let that be a lesson for all of us. Stay close to the word. Stay close to accountability. And when the moment comes to stand for truth, stand. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. If this blessed you, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with somebody who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them. And as always, keep it honest, keep it grounded, keep the faith. We out.